Hello and welcome to another training video. Now in today's session what we're going to do is take a look at how you can create some simple regions from a base map for whatever your purpose is, and this is tied in with my previous video on then showing those regions with a theme based upon some data. So the tool we're going to use here is PowerPoint. Now I've opened up PowerPoint here and I've set the first slide to be a blank slide rather than a default title slide. This just makes it easier to put the image on there, and we're simply going to use this because it's got some tools that we can use to work with the image which are not actually in Excel. So once we've done it in PowerPoint, what we're going to do is copy and paste this from PowerPoint into Excel and then use it there with our data set. So the first thing I've got in the background is I have Google open, Google Maps, and I've just zoomed into a certain area in West London. Now I'm going to open PowerPoint on top of that, so I'm not minimizing Google, I'm opening PowerPoint on top of it, and now I go to Insert and I say Screenshot, and I'm going to choose a screen clipping. Now if you notice this icon here, you'll see that I've already added it to my quick access toolbar, and the reason is because I use this all the time in all Office programs. So I've actually got it added onto my quick access toolbar, and that means I can get to it from any ribbon. I don't have to go to the insert ribbon to get to it. As soon as I click here, it minimizes PowerPoint down and it shows me whatever is underneath. Now that's why it's important that I don't minimize Google Maps down, and I've just got it visible underneath. Now I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to click and drag over an area that's big enough to include all of the regions I want. Now I'm going to actually trace some of the parks in West London, and so we shall see what this looks like. So I've now got that in PowerPoint and I don't need Google Open anymore. I'm going to resize this just simply so that it's the full size of my screen, and I can even go slightly larger if I want to get right to the edges, but that's fine for now. Now the next thing I'm going to do is use some of the drawing tools in PowerPoint, and again I could go to Insert and Shapes, and the shape I want is this one here. So although it's in the section for lines, it's actually going to draw a region, but it's a freeform shape. Now once again, I've already used this, so it's in my recently used shapes, and I commonly use these shapes, and so I've added that menu onto my quick access toolbar. I click there and it's in my recent shapes. Now there's a couple of ways of using this tool. Now first of all, I can click and then move and click and move and click, and what this does is it draws a vector line between the points at which I click. Now the other way of using this is to click and then drag, and that will draw multiple points as you drag, so kind of like drawing with a pencil. I far prefer the click and move method, drawing polygons. It lets you have much more control later on, and when we get back to the very beginning of our shape, what you'll notice is that the whole shape is now filled in. So a single click will insert that as a solid shape. Now I want to change the properties of this shape, and then I'll use those properties to paint over the other shapes as I draw them. So I'm going to change the properties. First of all, what I do is I make sure I'm on my shape format ribbon, and if I click down here where it says shape styles, that actually goes into the format shape. Now if you're used to using Control-1 in Excel, unfortunately that doesn't work for getting this format shape dialog open, so you will have to actually click on the expand or use the other commands to get there. We're going to change the fill, and I'm simply going to set a color of green because it's a park, and I'm going to increase the transparency to 60% so we can see through that shape and into the park. Now I'm going to draw another shape down here, fairly similar, but this time I'm going to zoom in the area that I want. So I held down Control and used the scroll wheel to zoom in, and of course that will make it a lot easier to actually get to the shape. If I use the control and the wheel and I happen to have something selected, then what it does is it zooms me into the area that I have something selected. So that can be a bit fiddly if you actually want to choose something that's not on the screen. So I'm going to draw around this one next. So Battersea Park. And I'm going to show you a couple of options we've got with these tools. So again, I'm going to use the point and click method. So I'm going to click in the corner and then just click down here and there. And now for this one, I'm just going to click once in the middle. I'm not going to try and trace that curved shape. So you'll notice that I've actually cut off some of the chord there, but that doesn't matter because I'm going to fix that in a minute. Now the way I'm going to fix it is by editing these points, and the points themselves create a actually quite complex shape, and the option I get is to use the Bezier handles which let me edit the corners. So if I go into edit shape and edit points, as soon as I select that point there, I get some handles either side. Now if I were to take that handle there and drag it, you'll notice that the curve is now coming out, and it's coming out relative to how far away I've dragged from that point. Now of course I could do the same with that one there. I now have the curve points from that angle rather than from that angle. So this is how you can make an incredibly smooth, completely smooth in fact, line. I'm now going to take the settings I had on this object and I'm simply going to apply them to this object. So I just use the Format Painter tool to apply the same settings. I'm now just going to go through and select a couple more. So I'm going to do Green Park and then St James's Park. And once more, if I deselect and then I can zoom into the area I need. And let's see if we can find St James's Park. So this one here is Green Park and this is St James's Park. So we'll do Green Park first of all. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do them both in one go. So I'm going to draw a line around both of these. This one is not part of Green Park, this is Buckingham Palace. So I will draw around Green Park and St James's Park in one go. And then I'm going to divide the two into two separate shapes, and I'll show you the method of doing that. So the first thing again, I'm going to go into here and my shapes, and again I'm simply going to do my click and drop. And of course, again, depending on how accurate we needed this, we could well go around, change our points into curve points rather than angular points. But for this instance, we're not going to worry about that. So now we have a single shape for those two parks, and I want to divide them in half. Now the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to draw another shape on top of one of the ones I want to cut out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the shape I draw on top is considerably bigger than this shape. Now, before I do that, I'm just going to apply the formatting. So go back and use the Format Painter. And this is so that this shape has a transparency on it so I can see through it. I'm going to take off that for a moment. Now, my next shape that I draw is the same tool again. Now I want to go from this point here to, let's say, that corner point. Now that's the dividing line between Green Park and St James's Park. But now I'm going to carry on drawing that shape, and like I said, I'm making it considerably larger than the whole of this other shape. And the reason for that is because now what I want to do is I want to fragment the combination of these two shapes. So I'm going to select one of the ones that has the coloration or the formatting I want first of all. Then I hold down Control and select the other one. And now I'm going to go to this Merge Shapes option on the Shape Format tool, and I'm going to say Fragment. Now what you'll notice is it's used all of the lines, all of the outlines created from all the shapes, and it's now created separate shapes for each of those regions. And it's effectively done what I want, because by simply deleting this shape here, I've now separated Green Park and St James's Park. Now you could carry on and name all of the different areas, and of course that's what you would aim to do. What I'm going to do now instead of that is I'm going to go into my shape selection pane and do some renaming. Now I could manually click on a shape here because the names here at the moment don't bear any relation to the shapes themselves, so this is a good way of selecting them, and I will simply rename this one and I'll call this one Hyde Park. I'll now click down here, that one's a Battersea Park. And that one is Green Park. And that one is St James's Park. Now, you have to be careful not to do what I've just done, is unless you actually select it in the selection pane, when you start typing text, you're not renaming the shape, you're writing some text into the shape, and it actually goes into the shape in what's called text box 2. So I'm going to go into there. We are going to use text box 2 later on for creating labels for these shapes if we need to. But what we're also going to do, which is much more clever, is we're going to use comments, or notes as they're now called, to actually name them as you hover over them. So this one is St James's. Okay, so we've done all the renaming, and we don't need to worry about picture 4 because our data set is only going to include the ones which have a name for our data set to refer to. But in this instance, we are going to select picture 4 as well. We're going to copy all of that lot. We're going to now come across to Excel and simply paste it all into Excel. So now we have our map here, the base map, we have our shapes, we have the names of the shapes, and if we come across here to show the selection pane, you'll see that it's brought through the same names for the relevant shapes, and whichever one I click on, it's showing the correct name for those shapes. It's brought through the transparency settings, it's brought through all of the other object settings as well. So we can now use some code to refer to these by their name to apply different colors based upon whatever we're trying to analyze. So maybe we're trying to analyze the number of visitors in each park, and so we could color code them by the number of visitors. So this video was just to show you how you can actually create your own shapes, show you a couple of different tools there, and we'll take this further in the next video. I hope you found it useful. If you have, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, and once more, thank you for listening.